Hey, it's Mark Ferguson with Invest for More, and this is a property we bought, remodeled a couple of years ago. It's been rented since. We've had a little bit of drama here with different tenants, but nothing too crazy. But we're wondering now if the city is going to take this property from us or buy part of it, or what is going to happen with it. And it's a little bit frustrating because we haven't really had any communication from the city about their plans or what's going to happen. But we have heard from other people, and there's even some stuff published online about possibilities for the intersection right by this property. So we'll show you what the property looks like, talk about what's going on, and show you some of those project proposals. So this is Greeley, Colorado. If we zoom way out here where I live and work and have 40 some properties, I think, in that range. And this is a property I bought from a wholesaler a couple of years ago. And it came with this house, which has a basement apartment, this house right here, which is rented, and then this kind of third house that's in real bad shape, has a shed with it that we are not allowed to rent because of zoning rules and laws. So I've talked about this before, but basically zoning here allows you to have one property you can rent and an accessory building you can rent. So we can rent this, we can rent the basement apartment, that's fine, and we can rent another house on there, that's fine, but we can't rent 3 separate houses on that lot. So some people ask me why I don't just rent the house and then these 2 and not rent the basement. It's not the number of units that's the problem, it's the having multiple accessory buildings that's the problem. So we could actually have 3 or 4 units in this one house and we'd probably be fine and rent one other one, but it's just being able to rent 2 other houses. Now I know it seems kind of silly because we're in a housing shortage, there's not enough housing out there. There's really not any houses around this at all that are impacted by it. But if we wanted to make this legal, we'd have to go through a zoning process or a variance process, which would involve engineers and surveys and possibly getting every single part of this property up to code. And you never know what that's going to incur or what the city is going to say when you do that. So we rented this one in the basement, we rented this one, and this one we've just kind of left vacant and used for a little bit of storage. So the city has come along and said they want to redo this whole intersection because it's not safe or they need better traffic flow. These roads are somewhat busy. They're both just 2-lane roads. They're not crazy busy. I drive by here all the time. It's never really too backed up. So I don't know, a lot of times I feel like the city just wants to do stuff. But anyway, they have multiple proposals about changing this whole intersection. And so those could definitely impact my property, which is right here. And we even have people emailing us and taking pictures and getting access to the property. But they haven't really told me anything at all. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, to say the least. Now, if the city wanted to buy my property and pay me fair market value for it, I'd be okay with that. I'm not super attached to this property. If they wanted to buy this property and pay me less than it's worth, I would have a problem with that. In a situation like this, they can do eminent domain where they take a property if someone doesn't want to sell it to them, but they still have to pay fair market value. You can challenge it in court, or they can come to you, offer you money. You can come to some kind of an agreement with them. So it's not like they can just take it and not give you anything for it, but it still would be nicer to know what exactly is happening. But see, you can see we are very close to the road, and it is kind of a weird intersection with a couple turn lanes, but not all the turn lanes, and it's got some weird angles on it. So here is what they are proposing. Here's that intersection on a City of Greeley page. I found this simply by searching for it, but I figured this out not because the city told me about it, but because somebody who actually rents space from me, some office space, does a lot of work with the city and development and different things, and somehow we were talking about this, or maybe I came to them and told them that the city had asked for some access to my property because they did ask for that. And he said, oh yeah, they're redoing that intersection. They're probably going to take your property. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, they want to completely redo that intersection. If you're adjacent to it, they might be taking your property and using it for that intersection. I'm like, oh, okay then. So I did a little bit more research, and actually just searching the web, I was able to find this project on redoing the intersection and some concept designs and different things going on. And then we are able to go to this PowerPoint from the city of Greeley that talks about the different, whoops, sorry, going too fast, possibilities here. So project goals to comfort of bicycle and pedestrian traffic, improve traffic flow, possible improvement to transit service options. And my property is right back over here, if you can see that. And then historic safety concern, I guess they're fatalities? Maybe I need to have someone explain this to me. That can't be correct. If there's maybe the circle is fatality. I'm trying to read there. Can we zoom in on this? No, that goes. Anyway, these must be some kind of traffic issues or something of some kind. Right there. I don't think those are all fatalities. Here's the picture. Limits impacts to property owners and utility providers. Houston Gardens, that's this area right here. Habitat for Humanity community, that's these properties right here. Mission Village, I think that's over here. Private landowners on southeast corner, that's me right here. Excel Energy and Atmos Gas, Greeley Canal number 3, that's the irrigation ditch right here that runs along it and along the property. So here are some of the different ideas of doing just a signal with improved skew, accommodates tractor trailers, reduces crossing distances, maintains reasonable access. Drawbacks: does not provide good options to improve bridge or culvert conditions, can cause more CO2 emissions due to wait time at light, would require relocation of major power poles near intersection. We have a drawing of it, and here's my property here, so that doesn't look like it impacts mine too much, but again, hard to say with their drawings. Then they have a single lane roundabout, reduce speeds, yada yada, reduce CO2, add space for art, aesthetic features. Maybe my property will be getting some art on it. We'll see. Drawbacks: significant ditch impacts, moderate property impacts to surrounding areas requiring row purchase, which is right-of-way purchase, utility impacts, and that's this one. So I don't know if this would be on my property or not. It sure looks like it's cutting into the front part of it there. Maybe that'd be the west part of it. Maybe not the north part as much, and taking property from a lot of other areas, but there's your roundabout. Our area has gotten roundabout happy, I will tell you that. A peanut roundabout. Reduce speed, shorter crossing, reduce CO2, add space for pedestrians and bicyclists, lowest costs, minimal impacts to the ditch. Drawbacks: unique layout, potential for confusion, limited truck improvements, potential for small retaining walls. And this one looks like maybe it's along my property lines now, but it kind of looks like it goes into them some too, so I don't know. But none of them seem to like take out my houses too much. But from what the other person I know said, he said he thinks they would try and take my property for sure. And then it's not just him saying that. There's also this. So I received this email on 11/14, which is interesting when we look at the dates. And I had received an email from the city of Greeley before too, asking to get onto my property for surveying stuff. And that's kind of how I was alerted that something was happening here. They didn't tell me why or if they're taking my property or not. But here's this email. Hello, we are a subcontractor assisting the city of Greeley with the 23rd Avenue and 4th to 5th Street intersection improvements projects. We are conducting some of the environmental clearances for the larger project, specifically the historic building clearance, and would like to access your property at 523rd Avenue on Tuesday 11/12, our preference, or the afternoon of Wednesday 11/13, the alternate date. Like I said, I got this email on the 14th, so they did come a little later. We will be on foot and wearing visibility vests. Our activities will include walking around and photographing the exterior of the buildings. We are happy to knock on the door and say hello or avoid any such disturbances as is your preference. Does that time frame work for you? Thank you. So I had responded to them and said, one, your dates are wrong, but do you know what the city's plans are for this? And they said they just didn't respond to that. So they did come, but if they're trying to clear historic building clearance, is that indicating that they are considering taking down the buildings, or is that saying that they are worried about the history of the lot? I don't know. My buildings are old. I will give you that. Are they historic? No. There are some buildings I own that you might consider historic and cool and interesting. These are probably not in that category. So based on this, does that mean they are thinking about doing something more than just taking a little bit of the land? And here we are back to this historically significant house that I own with its historically significant accessory buildings and shed. I should probably be building up how historically significant these buildings are so that the city knows how valuable the history is behind them. I'm pretty sure some of the first settlers in Greeley actually lived in these buildings. I mean, I don't have any proof of that or any direct knowledge, but my gut tells me that probably happened. So these are probably extremely valuable, and I'm hoping the city has that data to back that up and will also share that with us. So we'll see how all this works out. If it does get bought by the city, like I said, I'd be okay with that. I think they would probably base it on the income approach because, like I said, I have this house rented now. I think it's rented for $1,300. The basement was rented. The tenant just moved out, but it was rented for $800, I think. The other house is rented for $1,200, or is it $1,250, in that range? And we kind of use the other one for storage, so that definitely has some value there as well. If you were to rezone it and get that fourth unit approved somehow, that would definitely add some value. And maybe, if the city wants to come along and say, hey, we're going to take some of your land and some of your property and pay you for it, maybe as part of that deal, I say, okay, how about we just make this legal real quick without going through the whole variance and zoning process, and you just say, okay, it's fine to have 4 units here. Now, parking still might be a little bit of an issue because it's not the biggest lot in the world, so it might be tough to have a 4th unit here for parking purposes, but it sure would add a lot more value, because if we were to, say, be able to rent that, 3rd house for $1,000 a month, it's pretty small, it has low ceilings, it's got some issues, but it might add $130,000 in value to the property once rented. So, yeah, we'll kind of see how all that plays out. But again, the city has not contacted me. They have not told me anything. Maybe they're waiting to get something approved. But you'd kind of think, since I am a property owner, since I mentioned in their proposals, since they specifically called out my property and it's on their map, that they would kind of notify you in case you wanted to pipe in with some ideas or thoughts on different projects or how it might impact your property or what your feeling is on it, because, hey, if I was willing to sell, and that might make it easier for them in some aspects, or if I'm going to be difficult, that might impact how they choose their proposal as well. Or maybe I could trick them and pretend to be difficult but really not be difficult, or the other way around, pretend to be willing to work with them and then become difficult later on. There's all kinds of different options that you could have. So it's just an interesting situation. I've heard this from some other people I've talked to where there's been similar situations and people were just kind of left in the dark as well until the last minute. And especially, if you were living here, right? If this was your house you're living in, you definitely want as much notice as possible to plan for what you might be doing in the future. Whereas if it's a rental, obviously it impacts the tenants, right? They would be impacted more than I would with their lives and where they live and everything. but they would still want some notice, but it's less impactful for me as an investor than it is for those tenants. So that's the property. That's what I know so far, which is very little. But the proposal, if I go back to this page, is making some progress and coming up pretty soon. So here we are back on the City of Greeley page. And if you look over here, it says who's listening, the traffic engineer, life cycle, October 2023, which was last month, selection of concept design. That's got a check mark. November 23rd, refinement of concept design. That's got a check mark. 2024, possible preliminary design plans with public input. Is that happening right now? And then they want to do this in 2025, which is coming up very quickly. So if they are taking properties or doing stuff, I mean, you kind of have to give people some notice, right? So I don't know if there's 7 months ago, a year, those posts are very old. Post updated February 2024. But then it's got, so maybe these haven't happened yet and that was the just schedule? I don't know. So I guess we'll find out. And if anybody has any information for me from the City of Greeley, I would like to hear that. I've got some information from people who go to the board meetings. I don't do that. I've got other things to do, like not go to board meetings. But I think they said it keeps getting delayed or not talked about on the docket or something. So it'll be interesting to see how this works out, what happens. But that's the information I have now. And if they do decide to take my property or part of the property or try and buy my property or not do anything, I will try and update everybody, and we'll see what happens. All right, thanks for watching. We'll have more videos on the other properties I own. None of them I know of are being in a situation like this. But we have lots of crazy different stories with tenants and contractors and construction and different things. And of course, our businesses like the liquor store and laundromat and different stuff, we have lots of fun stories with those too. So stick around and we'll be back with much more.